Oh. Is that better? I'm going to have to do it like that, otherwise Richard's going to have a heart attack when he hit it that hard. Good morning. Y'all bow with me, please. Gracious Heavenly Father, again we come asking you to forgive us of our sins, to say thank you for the weekend, all the blessings that you always give us. Thank you for your love, your mercy, your kindness, your forgiveness, and most of all, your grace. I ask you to bless us and lead us. Let us have a good week. I ask these things in my Savior's name. Amen. Well, Mr. Williams is here, so I guess we can start. Okay, you know the drill. Well, I've got Paul up there. They ain't gonna be brief.
I'll be quick. Brevity.
Okay, my mentor, Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I know brevity is appreciated here. I got two little propositions. House Bill 217. This is allowing what we've been doing for the last 30 years or so. Approximately 70% of our local retirement systems have already been invested in mutual funds. Back in 2014, an attorney with the Georgia Department of Law issued a letter to the Department of Audits in response to a question, said they were not sure the law in the state of Georgia allowed our small funds to invest in mutual funds, our small retirement systems. In September of 14, another letter from the Department of Audits and Accounts was issued saying that it's unclear what the law says, but we're not going to take any action against the local governments or our small funds that are invested in, currently have portfolios currently invested in mutual funds. So all we're saying is this straightens up the law in Georgia that allows us to invest in mutual funds and commingled funds here. We are not getting into any type of other investments. These are mutual funds that are basically handled through the controller of the currency. It's nothing additional. This is what we've been doing in the past, just asking to codify this.
And that was brief.
Not brief enough? Well, I wanted you to...
Hey, Rules Committee, we're going to let you invest in mutual funds and some of these stuff we haven't before. This is a good deal.
All right.
I did it in 7 seconds.
I'll try that next time if it doesn't get out, but I would appreciate not having to come back and take up your valuable time.
You did want to present another bill,
I do have another one, yes, sir.
I don't know whether you do or not.
I would love to try. I'd love to have an opportunity to give it a shot.
All right.
This is House Bill 256. There's a lot more pages on here. This takes a firefighter's pension fund. We are doing some definitions, adding definitions in there. Big thing is we're allowing them to select up to 5 beneficiaries for their death benefit. They've only been able to do 1 in the past. And we're increasing the maximum fine for any person who knowingly and willfully falsifies information to assume or to get retirement benefits or benefits from the fund. We're increasing the fine from $500 to $2,000. Somebody wanted to know why we didn't go to 5. Well, they just picked a number. They didn't want it to be too punitive, but they wanted to get their attention. And that's what this bill does. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer your questions on that.
Does anyone have questions for Mr. Maxwell? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, members of the committee.
Mr. Battles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a simple bill. This is one brought by our legislative counsel, David Buttram.
Which bill is it?
It is, oh, I'm sorry, it's House Bill 266. It's on modified structure. It's on the back side. What happened was several years ago, Article 7, Chapter 20 was changed, and where it states the law of this state upon domestic life insurance companies was struck in every area except this one. And David said before he left as an attorney here, he'd like to have his last mistake cleared up. So this was just taking out something that the rest of the bill was cleaned up several years ago.
Thank you. Mr. Corbett, did you see those two fine examples of brevity?
I think I can do better than that, Mr. Chairman.
I certainly hope so.
On the front page, under modified open rule, House Bill 199, it's a uniformity bill, and it's uniform in the way that a timber harvester reports to a county or city that they're harvesting timber. What I failed to say the other day, that ACCG and GMA both support this bill, and I appreciate your favorable consideration. Thank you.
In today's climate, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
I'd appreciate your favorable consideration, though.
Any questions, Mr. Corbett? Thank you. Mr. Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here this morning again to ask for a favorable consideration of HB 211. This is the annual drug update bill where we're adding controlled substances as well as the update of the other Legend products. It's a housekeeping bill that we do each year, and like to try to get it moving as quickly as we can, get it across to the other side. Appreciate your favorable consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? No questions. Thank you. Ms. Beskin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Is this your first time?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman.
Y'all can abuse her any time now.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm here today about House Bill 297, which is on page 1 under open rule, the third bill. House Bill 297 relates to professional licensing boards. It provides that a professional licensing board may contract with a National Association of State Boards to receive applications for examinations and to perform administrative services with respect to such applications. It also adds the two words "and regulations" to empower the state licensing board to adopt such rules and regulations as it needs in order to implement its examination standards. The reason for this change is that it streamlines the professional licensing process by allowing a state board to contract with a national board to process its examination application. So I respectfully request your favorable consideration.
Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed on line 19 that we already have rules, and you're proposing that we now add regulations. Is that really what we want to do?
After much consideration and back and forth with legislative counsel, I think we decided that it was well advised to add the rules and regulations, to add the words "and regulations" to the rules to expand the scope of the statute.
Mr. Golick.
Representative Beskin, pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act, I mean, you've got a certain time frame on notice on the regulations and implementation that it's going to lay in the Secretary of State's office for X number of days. So that can be an extremely lengthy process. How is the extension of that process with the regulation promulgation procedure, how is that going to go ahead and extend and maybe undermine the entire process? And there could be serious delay involved.
I haven't anticipated that question or thought about that, but I will work today with the Secretary of State's office and get back with you should I have another hearing here before the Rules Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Does the leader have a question?
I couldn't type that in.
Mr. Harrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 1, modified structure, House Bill 85 is an economic development and jobs bill that will allow the redevelopment of property formerly used as Central State Hospital, and with Chairman Roberts' amendment will allow the construction of a Publix grocery store. That's House Bill 85.
Any questions? That was the one you did on the school.
85. Modified structure, first page. On page 2, fifth one down, House Bill 206 adds active sanitation workers to the existing law regarding the move-over law when passing an active sanitation truck. Those that may not know that sanitation workers are the 4th most deadly profession in the nation by our labor department. So that just provides a little additional security and safety for those workers. That's House Bill 206.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. I can certainly see the merit here, but in areas with the other pullover for emergency vehicles, when most people never knew the rule was changed, there were an awful lot of very large fines passed out, first-time offense.
Correct. This bill has a provision that says the motorist approaching that vehicle must slow down to 10 miles below the posted limit. So it actually reduces the discretion of the officer. So if you're a motorist and you come, let's say the speed limit is posted at 35 and you slow to 25, you know you're compliant with the law. So it takes out some of that gray area to reduce the issue that you mentioned.
As a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, I was not referring to the speed so much as the changing of lanes. People well within the speed limit, but knew nothing about the law we'd passed. And there were just literally thousands of tickets or dollars spent through no real fault of the person that didn't know it was a law. Will your bill have anything in it to inform citizens?
No, sir, it does not have any requirement for advertising of any sort.
Next one.
Mr. Chairman, my 2 more bills down, House Bill 261 provides that municipal and county-owned airports with active security may establish the hours of operation for their restaurants within the airport. And this would permit, for example, the Atlanta Hartsfield-Jackson Airport to change operating hours of some of their restaurants to serve primarily international passengers.
Questions?
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lumsden.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Under modified open rule, page 1, item 2, House Bill 99. This is a bill that simply provides for tenancy in common in a divorce situation that when 2 people are married and they divorce, that property is generally held as joint tenancy with right of survivorship. That's a difficult status when a divorce occurs. We're seeing it more and more with pro se divorces as well as out-of-state divorces. So this just provides a default of tenancy in common, which is something the courts can deal with.
Questions? Thank you.
The next bill is House Bill 338, is also under modified open rule, 7 down, House Bill 338. This is a bill that came through this body last year. It was passed by the House, went to the Senate, made it to Senate rules, and was set aside because of its relationship with the Joint Study Committee of the technology in our court system. This simply provides a mechanism for local governments by act of local legislation to create a funding stream for the acquisition and maintenance of the electronic citation systems.
Questions? Thank you. Mr. Bruce.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm coming in request of House Bill 89 under modified open rules. All this does is allows for an area over Fulton Industrial Boulevard to be designated as a drug-free zone. We're trying to clean up the prostitution and the drug dealing in the area.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Spencer.
Good morning, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm asking for House Bill 18, that is the modified structure there, the first one. Essentially exempts aerospace engineers from licensure because there's been a long-standing oversight of the FFA over this profession, and the accrediting body has not asked them to do a testing in the last 15 years. And we would be on the same parity with the state of Florida in competitiveness and attracting the aerospace industry. It's a jobs bill.
Any questions, Mr. Spencer? No questions. Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here about under modified structure, fourth one down, HB 114. This is a department bill I'm bringing on behalf of the Department of Driver Services. It does quite a few things. I'll only mention one, and I'll be glad to answer any questions. It changes some language in traffic citations and allows for the department not to send certified mail on every suspension of driver's licenses if it's for failure to appear. There's a physical note attached to this that shows that it's a savings of about $1.1 million a year for the state. It does several other things, Mr. Chairman. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer those for you.
Mr. Earhart.
Mr. Representative Tanner, you went to one place. We're now saying that on a suspended license, you're not going to have to send the certified mail. You realize what's happening in the state. You talk to the sheriff's departments and that type of thing. People who move, they're locking up 17-year-old girls on the way back to school because there's a suspended license over a citation that wasn't a super speeder or something like that. If we take away the last bastion of some semblance of actually getting a notification, it's going to get worse. We're spending millions in this state locking up people for weekends that we don't need to do. Are we making it easier for them to do that now?
No, sir. The bill changes the traffic citation to make it clear that if you fail to show up for court, your license will be suspended. It'll be on the 29th of the next month. But they still will send a mail piece to you. It'll just be first class. It's either 40 or 60% of all the certified mails are being returned because people move. So again, that's the only thing that changes is not requiring the certified piece, but it still requires that a piece of mail be sent. It just is the certified piece. The Department of Driver Services feels like they're spinning their wheels and it's just a waste of money. I know there are other legislation out there dealing with suspended licenses and maybe changing what licenses can be suspended for. This doesn't address that piece.
You could do that in this bill, though.
And there is other legislation that does that. I actually approached the Legislative Council about that issue, Mr. Chairman, and they said because it was a different subject that it would require a different bill.
Mr. Willard.
Thank you. I wanted to ask also, follow up with Mr. Earhart, why not require the local government to first send a letter notifying the person's failure to appear, to give them an opportunity to come into court to resolve the issue before we go through the steps under law for a revocation of a license? I think that's where we really need to have something done. Too often they just have the notice go in, they don't do any follow-up to try and get the person to come to court to be sure they've got them properly notified before they go through that suspension. So a lot of paperwork and a lot of time and anger and hostility grows out of this.
I understand that concern. I think as far as the Department of Driver Services is concerned, they're open to any ideas relating to the local government being involved. They just feel like that at this point sending the certified mailings is not having an effect on, and it's just wasting taxpayer dollars at the state level.
I'd be happy to try and work with you on that if you'd like to.
No more questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Williamson.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Under modified structure, page 2, House Bill 184, it's the Department of Banking and Finance's annual cleanup bill. It comes with a support of the governor's office, both banks, credit unions, and the mortgage services industry. That it's got cleanup language for each one of those three industries. The two major points in this bill are that it's going to give parity powers to the state chartered systems. Whenever the federally regulated institutions are granted some sort of advantage, then the state can immediately move to have the same advantage for our banks and credit unions here in the state of Georgia. The second thing that comes with the full support of the credit union industry is it'll grant the ability, when a credit union does get into trouble, and absent right now, basically the only way the regulators can step in, the state regulators step in, is just close the credit union. This would allow the regulators the flexibility, the state regulators the flexibility to step in and take over the credit union to rehabilitate it, to try to save a loss to both their depositors fund and keep the institution open in the community. Be happy to answer any questions.
No question. Wait, whoa. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Williams, who is the banking commissioner now?
Kevin Hagler.
Kevin Hagler. How long has he been banking commissioner?
About a year and a half.
Okay. All right. Second of all, have you read the entire bill?
Yes, sir.
Every word?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Williamson.
I'm sorry.
I can promise you now there's two of you that's read the whole bill.
Yes, sir.
You're not supposed to ask a question until you've read it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, members. Redo your buttons. Anybody got one? Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Little election bill on page 2, House Bill 194.
Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Got a bill on the yellow sheet that I filled out a form for last Thursday. I thought maybe it would be on the blue sheet today. It's a bill that passed the House last year and got over to the Senate and got stalled there. It has to do with the redemption process of property sold on courthouse steps.
What number is it?
House Bill 51.
What?
51.
Okay. Mr. Hamilton, you got it pushed again? Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 18, get us on par with Florida. Representative Spencer's Spaceport Bill, and House Bill 211, Representative Broderick's Drug Update Bill.
Mr. Setzler.
Mr. Chairman, HB 126, simple for vehicles related bill allowing GPSs on windshields. Passed unanimously through Science Technology. Also HB 18, Representative Spencer's bill.
Ms. Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask on the back page, House Bill 195. It's the biosimilar bill. It was sent back to committee. We did what you said, and it's here and ready to go. And also, I would like to ask for, on the first page, House Resolution 304. Under open rules, Georgia is an aging state, and we are having a huge number of increasing Alzheimer cases, and really we do not have physicians and nurses and people trained to take care of these people, and this is urging our universities to include that in their curriculum.
Mr. Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put my name by HB 199 and also HB 85, please.
Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to put my name by Bill 217. It's very important for the Georgia Municipal Association and ACCG, and House Bill 256.
Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to add my name as well to House Bill 199. Thank you.
Ms. Abrams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would like to ask for HB 89. It simply extends the coverage of drug-free commercial zones in the state.
Mr. Earhart. Maybe it was. I thought it was you or Chastain. I didn't know he was on the committee. Mr. A. Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bringing back to you House Bill 192. As it was explained the other day, thanks to some of the distinguished members of the committee, there was an error and it called for an amendment. And there's an amendment on your desk that clarifies the language about the credit card agreement or the P card agreement.
Nobody else? All right. All right, we're setting for Tuesday. Under open, HB 217. Any opposition? It's on. Under open, HB 256. Any opposition? It's on. Under open, HR 304. Any opposition? Under modified open, HB 199. Any opposition? Under modified structure, HB 206. Any opposition? Modified open, HB 266. Modified structure, excuse me. Any opposition? Its own. That's it.